are. McDonald's hamburger shakes and fries. Try some.
Back in 1986, The Economist published the Big Mac Index as a more digestible way of measuring the purchasing power parity between two currencies. And between the publication in various academic textbooks to dozens of peer-reviewed journal reports to, yes, even the rise of its own subject of study, burgernomics, it's safe to say that the Big Mac Index has been a reasonable real-world measurement of purchasing power parity, or as they term it, patty power parity. But are all Big Macs created equal? Well, as it turns out, no, not at all. From differences in price, calories, and even quality of ingredients, just because the Mickey D's might have the same logo around the world does not mean that you're actually getting the same flagship product. So in today's video, I'm taking you all the way from Europe to the United States and back again to take a bite into the differences between the Big Mac and answer the questions: are the Big Macs that I buy here in the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Switzerland actually comparable to the US original? And with the cost of the Big Mac outpacing inflation, how much does the price of my meal cost at all of these places? And how long would I have to work for it? Well, let's take a look. But first, to set the stage, let's go over just a few fun facts about the Big Mac, shall we? Although McDonald's is known for many different products, it's hard to argue that the Big Mac isn't the most iconic McDonald's menu item worldwide. In 2020, the Big Mac was available in over 100 countries. Estimates suggest that 900 million are sold annually around the globe, with 2.4 million being bought every single day. Although, fair warning, technically the Big Mac isn't their most popular item. Nope, the top honor of the best-selling item of all time goes to the chain's French fries, which, let's be honest, really probably isn't all that surprising because it's pretty much the staple side to most of their menu items, but it is worth noting that the Big Mac does come in second place. When I went back to the United States, it seemed like there was a McDonald's restaurant on almost every street corner. There are, in fact, over 14,000 restaurants across the United States, and according to Adweek, my fellow Americans eat 550 million Big Macs each year. Here in Europe, France takes the most McDonald's per capita, followed by Switzerland. However, don't let those statistics fool you because McDonald's is definitely a giant in the food service industry here in Germany too, where I happen to live. The first McDonald's restaurant in Germany opened on December 4th, 1971 at a location on Martin-Luther-Straße in Munich. Today, that very same McDonald's Germany Munich branch manages one of the largest markets within the global McDonald's organization, employing around 58,000 people during the fiscal 2016 year and achieving a net revenue of 3.2 billion euros, which I fully admit 2016 isn't exactly a recent figure, but I wanted to include it because I just thought it really truly illustrated just how big of an economic force McDonald's is here within the German economy. In fact, with a share of around 25%, McDonald's Germany is the clear market leader in the food service sector. So with all of that being said, let's unwrap the Big Mac a little bit, shall we? But before we dig into the numbers, I want to say a big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video and keeping my online identity safe with the best VPN available. If you don't know what a VPN is, it stands for Virtual Private Network, and it encrypts all of the data sent between your computer and the internet so no one can steal your personal information. But a VPN can be used for so much more than just security. It can also be used to unlock content that isn't in your area and access websites by changing the virtual location of your computer, which is a handy tool that I used for this exact video. Had it not been for my VPN, I wouldn't have been able to download and see the USA McDonald's app to get real accurate and location-specific prices on Big Macs that we are comparing today. So if you don't already have a VPN, I highly suggest giving Surfshark a try. We recently made the switch because it has excellent speed performance and I can use one account for multiple devices. So secure your privacy with Surfshark today. Head over to surfshark.com/TyBastian for 4 extra months. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. To get started, simply click the link down below in the description of this video. No matter where you happen to buy one, a McDonald's Big Mac is, of course, 2 beef patties, cheese, shredded lettuce, pickles, minced onions, and a Thousand Island type dressing, advertised as special sauce on a 3-slice sesame seed bun. But that does not mean that those same ingredients aren't all created or sourced equally around the globe. You see, in Germany, Big Macs feature this handy little label stating proudly that those 100% beef patties are specifically sourced from Germany. In fact, McDonald's is one of the largest buyers of beef in Germany. Plus, McDonald's cows in the Best Beef program have more space in the barn or spend more time on pasture. They live longer on the farm and therefore have an improved carbon footprint for their milk and meat. But beyond beef, McDonald's Germany also sources around 60 to 65% of its raw materials from Germany. This is beneficial because, according to McDonald's, it allows them to not only support local agriculture, but also keep transport routes as short as possible, which, of course, also has a positive effect on the freshness of those ingredients. In addition, roughly 32% of their ingredients come from the European Union, and about 4% were sourced from other countries outside of the EU. But be careful here because, of course, these kind of figures change depending on which ingredient you're most interested in learning more about and, well, also what time of year it is and where they can source those ingredients. For example, the Munich McDonald's Corporation published in 2016 that 77% of their potatoes, 98% of the milk in sundaes and shakes, and 100% of the eggs come directly from Germany. However, also in winter, while they usually source their lettuce from southwestern regions of Europe like Italy and Spain, poor weather conditions in the winter of 2016-2017 resulted in a crop failure, which meant that at times they did have to buy lettuce from Tunisia and the United States. But specifically to the McDonald's Big Mac, this does mean that you can be pretty certain that the vast majority of the ingredients that go into it are produced fairly locally and, are probably pretty fresh. And that same standard for high-quality ingredients that are made locally is also found in other countries around Europe as well. In France, for example, it's the buns that are proudly sourced locally. The wheat used to make Big Mac buns is 100% French. Specifically, McDonald's in France highlights the fact that a whopping 788 French producers contributed to supplying the wheat to make their Label Rouge wheat flour. That same flour, by the way, is also sourced from the Controlled Sustainable Farming Sector, or CRC, which means that this guarantee of 100% French cereals are also grown with respect to biodiversity and are certified by an independent body. In the United Kingdom, McDonald's works with over 23,000 British and Irish farmers to source their ingredients. Their beef, eggs, and milk all come from UK farms, as does their pork, and when in season, their lettuce is also sourced locally in the United Kingdom. Plus, their chicken is also mainly sourced from Europe, with UK farmers making up the second largest European supplier. But in Switzerland, they like to take things one step further, choosing to keep their very short supply routes and, of course, the infamous Swiss quality. They prefer to source a lot of things from within their own country. So there, more than 86% of all ingredients that make up the entire McDonald's menu come from Swiss suppliers. But unfortunately, when I was trying to figure out what exactly went into my Big Mac that I purchased in the United States, things got a lot more complicated. In the United States, McDonald's proudly advertises that its Big Macs are all made with 100% real beef, with no fillers, additives, or preservatives, which is great. But where does that beef come from exactly? Well, like I said, it's complicated. Information supplied by McDonald's USA says that the company, quote, partners with a global network of suppliers and farmers to provide quality ingredients and packaging materials. The website goes on even further and names Oklahoma City-based Lopez Foods as a key supplier of beef, pork, and chicken to the chain since 1968. But honestly, once I started investigating things a bit further, I found out that it's actually extraordinarily difficult to figure out where the beef for my Big Mac patties actually came from. For example, this lengthy and well-researched report on beef sustainability and McDonald's highlighted that, quote, a typical cow may change hands 2 to 4 times before even being slaughtered and then sold to market. A single hamburger patty at McDonald's can contain meat from multiple cattle originating at multiple farms and ranches, even on multiple continents, raised in different climates on different diets. And add into that the complex situation that there are actually hundreds of owner-operators in these franchise businesses that actually handle the vast majority of the purchasing of those ingredients themselves. Well, if you ask yourself the question, where does the beef, the cheese, the lettuce, the buns actually come from? Well, it sort of depends on where you bought your Big Mac in the United States in the first place. And then, of course, where or who that store bought their ingredients from, and maybe where they got it from. McDonald's works with thousands of suppliers to purchase everything served in the restaurant, from beef patties and nuggets to napkins and ketchup packets. And just a real quick disclaimer here. I'm not trying to say that the quality of ingredients in a US Big Mac is somehow greater or lower than the quality of ingredients in a German Big Mac. After all, what does quality even mean? It really kind of depends on what exact metric you're trying to analyze. But I do think there is something curious. There's an EU-wide directive that requires food labeling. So the McDonald's in Germany, the McDonald's in France, the McDonald's in Switzerland, they're really all pretty transparent with their consumers about the region and the specific vendor of where many of their ingredients come from, and of course are then proud of the fact that they're sourced locally, which they argue is paramount to freshness and quality. For example, the McDonald's in Germany even lets you know that the pickles that they use on all of their sandwiches come 100% from Germany, from the same supplier in Bavaria that they have been using for over 50 years. But that same information on the quality of the pickles on a Big Mac in the United States is absent from the US McDonald's website. And I mean, this is all in my opinion, but it does sort of feel like the absence of information speaks loudly. And it gives me the personal impression that, yeah, the pickles might not actually be created equally, and they may be of a lower quality in the United States. But, I can't confirm that. So ultimately, I kind of had to ask myself the question, what do all of these things mean when it comes down to the ultimate price that I pay for that Big Mac meal in all these respective locations? Now, Big Mac devotees will likely tell you that the burger is still worth its current price, no matter what it costs. But that is starting to be called into question. You see, prices have gone up significantly since 1967, when McDonald's first charged just 45 cents for this double-decker creation. But yeah, what are the prices today, and how does all of this sort of relate to that Big Mac index that I talked about earlier on in this video? For transparency, to check the prices of a Big Mac at all the locations listed, I use the prices on the McDonald's app at all the locations that, again, you see here on your screen, which includes London, Paris, Munich, Zurich, and Atlanta. And yes, of course, just another disclaimer, prices are actually going to vary even within a country. This is very much not a scientific study, and this is just for entertainment purposes and to give you kind of a point of reference. But on the app for each of these locations, I added to my cart a Big Mac meal with a side of French fries and a Coca-Cola, as well as a single Big Mac so you can compare the prices. And just as an additional data point, I also am going to list the caloric value of a Big Mac in all these locations because, as we discussed earlier, they don't all actually source their ingredients the same in all these locations, so there actually is a difference in how many calories go into a Big Mac at all of these locations. So let's take a look at this data together and see what I found. Ranked from most calories to least calories, the American Big Mac comes out on top. And interestingly, the UK on the bottom, with almost 100-calorie difference here. That same single Big Mac ranked from cheapest to most expensive, simply converting all currencies to the US dollar at the exchange rate of the time of filming. The cheapest Big Mac will be found in Paris, France, and the most expensive, maybe unsurprisingly, is in Zurich, Switzerland. Next, the Big Mac meal, ranked from cheapest to most expensive, again converting all currencies to the US dollar. The cheapest Big Mac meal is now found in London, and the most expensive, once again, is Zurich. Now, obviously, the researchers at The Economist collect all of this data at a lot more places, and use these prices to take a look at the purchasing power parity between these currencies. And they make an analysis to say whether it is under or overvalued, which for sure is really interesting if you're somebody who's interested in just taking a look at general macroeconomic trends. But I would imagine that for the majority of people who have stumbled across this video, you're probably taking a look at these costs and wondering to yourself, well, what does that price mean to me? So first, I wanted to compare how long someone at each of those McDonald's restaurant locations would have to work to afford their Big Mac meal outright. So considering that the starting hourly wage at each of these locations after tax means that despite being more expensive relative to the wages, it's actually the Swiss meal which comes out at the best value, and the United States as the least. In fact, you have to work almost double the amount of time to get a meal stateside. And for sure, there are a lot of holes in this analysis. I'm making the forward assumption that I'm getting the same quantity of items in all of these meals. I would say that we are making the assumption that this is a meal at each of the locations, and that McDonald's has made the decision that this is an appropriate meal for that specific consumer. So I do think it is really interesting just to take a step back and realize how long would someone have to work for that meal in each of these locations. And for me, that is probably one of the most fascinating things to take a look at. And this is, of course, very important, specific to the American McDonald's, as the conversation surrounding affordability has been heating up with concerns about inflation. In the United States specifically, there have been several viral posts this year which have featured the high cost of certain McDonald's, especially at one rest stop in Darien, Connecticut, where a Big Mac meal cost $18 in person. And this meal from that specific restaurant on Grubhub is even more expensive, listed at $21.59 at press time. Now, granted, this price is of course a bit inflated. This is being sold at a truck rest stop, which, yeah, they for sure exploit the fact that you're on the road, you're probably limited in time, you've been sitting for a long time, and you're going to pay a premium to not have to drive really far off of the highway in order to find yourself something to eat. But I do think the story really goes just to underscore the toll that inflation and the rising cost of food has had on the overall food sector, especially the fast food sector, which really sort of came to be in the first place, marketing itself on affordability. Now, as I hinted on earlier in this video, PPP is one of the most widely researched areas in international finance, and the Economist's annual Big Mac Index is just one kind of analysis, where they use the Big Mac in place of the traditional basket of services used in PPP research. But nothing is perfect, and there has been some criticism of the Big Mac Index, specifically its failure to take into account all of the things that I talked about earlier on in this video. While yes, we can compare the purchasing power of a currency, the price of a Big Mac is determined by a whole host of factors, including the way it's manufactured and distributed, which of course is not uniform across all countries or even within a single country. It also doesn't take into consideration the relative cost associated with labor to staff the stores, the land rent of the storefront, the capital goods, and commodity ingredients needed, and the additional costs within the franchise license to operate that McDonald's restaurant. And here's the thing, while yes, everything of all I just said is true, the Big Mac Index is heavily influenced by labor costs and the effect that those costs have on PPP. However, I would personally argue that often when we talk about the rising cost of inflation, and we tend to kind of blame that on labor costs, I think personally that a lot of that in this specific case is really just a smokescreen. It's both easy and convenient, in my opinion, just to simply blame the worker rather than take a look at the totality of what's going on within the industry. Earlier this year in California, for example, there was a dramatic jump in labor costs after a new law boosted the hourly wage for fast food workers on April 1st from $16 to $20 an hour. And so naturally, there were a slew of news publications essentially blaming the rising cost of your Big Mac on the people who likely don't even make enough money to have proper health care for their families. Meanwhile, the story you probably missed was this one. Despite record inflation and rising prices, McDonald's was raking in record profit margins and earnings. which the leadership self-described as a, quote, successful strategic price increase. And just to reiterate this one more time, gauging the relative price of any item at a restaurant is tricky because it's going to depend on that location as well as the management that happens at that franchise. However, corporate McDonald's does have the capacity to rein in the prices if need be. And so just to add some French fry salt into our economic wounds, I have to say, in recent years, instead of keeping prices low, McDonald's has chosen instead to spend over $5 billion on stock buybacks that juiced the stock's value, enriching their investors and executives instead of using those profits, like I mentioned, to help keep consumer prices down. So I would kind of love to hear from you down in the comment section of this video. Do you personally think that the Big Mac is still a good measurement of PPP? Or has the Big Mac price just become so hyperinflated by corporate greed and profits that it no longer represents the purchasing habits of the everyday consumer? Yeah, I'd love to hear from you, so please let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And as always, if you enjoyed what you saw today, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And for more content from S𝗨𝗣𝗣𝗢, hit that subscribe button. So, I'll see you next Sunday. Tschüss!